Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to the channel. This is another Basso bike. This is actually called the Venta R, and this is Basso's entry-level road bike. And I'm gonna be talking about that concept in this video. My Basso contact recently reached out and said, hey, we've got this bike. He described what the bike was and says, Louis, go ahead and pick the bike up, ride it around. You may or may not want to make a video of it because it may not fit in with your channel and what you normally do. I thought about that one for a minute and I was like, not really sure how to take that. It's not an elitist channel, but I do realize that I've been riding a lot of high performance bikes. That's the phrase that we'll use. Even my bike builds are more towards the performance spectrum of cycling. But one of the things that conversation coincided with was a comment that I got on the channel about a recommendation for an entry-level road bike. One of the viewers asked me about that, and I used to have a patented answer about that. It was, go get yourself a Cannondale Cat 10, equip it with Shimano 105, and you'll be golden, because the Cat 10 with Shimano 105 and a decent set of wheels came in at a good price point. It was a very capable bike. I really can't think of a bike that did so much so well for so many people and costing what it costs. And it was a bike that if you wanted to do fast group rides, you could do it. If you wanted to learn how to do pace line drills and things like that, you could do it. If you wanted to take the bike climbing, it was capable. Even if you wanted to start doing criterium racing, the bike was perfect for that. But cycling has shifted. The whole industry has decided to go in a completely different direction where a bike like a Cannondale Cat 10 may no longer be future-proof and properly upgradable for somebody who comes into the sport today. Let me explain to you what I mean. The entry-level cyclist has changed completely. It used to be that there were mostly men kind of in their mid-20s to mid-30s coming into the sport, and they were fairly athletic, but the learning curve was adequate for them in that they could go through the paces of learning how to do, double pace line, doing their solo rides. If they wanted to pick up racing, they could do that. And for a lot of the cyclists from 10 or 15 years ago, they weren't even thinking about completing their first century until maybe a year, 2 years into the sport. That has shifted completely because the cyclist that comes into the sport today, the entry-level cyclist today, is somebody 35 years of age or older, sometimes into their 40s, 50s, and even 60s. They come in with the idea of what they want. They also have a relatively good level of fitness, and they have the resources. And they want to knock down these milestones, like they may want to go do Tenerife, or they may want to go do a big Gran Fondo. And many of these new cyclists are focusing on knocking out their first century 6 months or less into the sport, and they're achieving it. And not only that, back in the old days, the entry-level cyclist was okay putting around at 15, 16, 17 miles an hour until they developed their chops properly in group riding. A lot of these cyclists, the new entry-level cyclists, listen, within a couple weeks, they're able to get into a group ride in a double pace line, which doesn't require a whole lot of imagination, and be able to sustain 21 to 23 miles an hour on the flats. That's pretty impressive. Of course, the person's fitness, I've already mentioned that, but nutrition, information, and the equipment that people have helps to facilitate that. These are cyclists who will probably never ride a rim brake bike. And while cyclists like myself and many seasoned cyclists are very comfortable with owning rim brake bikes because we know how to take care of them and service them, we know how to find parts and to maintain them, and we understand the pros and the cons of rim brake bikes, but that's something that the industry has done an effective job of erasing going 5-10 years forward from now. You can feel the way you want to feel about that, but that's kind of like the reality of where we're at with the sport. The majority of cyclists are going to go the wave of what the industry has set. I've mentioned this many times on my channel. I have a Colnago V3 RS rim brake that I'm not giving up anytime soon. And that bike is the equal of any modern high performance disc brake bike. So the other thing that we have to consider is what's changed as far as entry-level bikes for the price point. It used to be that, okay, you'd make a recommendation of a Cannondale Cat 10 with Shimano 105. You could probably be able to put one of those together for $1,000, $1,500, and you'd be able to knock out all of the basic performance milestones that you wanted to knock out, even up to being able to take the bike out and start doing some crit racing. Well, price points have changed. The industry has moved the ball, and entry level may be subjective, but now entry level is considered somewhere in a range of $3,000 to $4,000. Now, we may want to argue that point all we want, and I know there are always outliers. We're going to find bikes where there's a liquidation on a frame set where you might be able to find something pretty decent for about $2,500, but that's the exception rather than the rule. The number, the dollar amount for entry level has shifted completely, and it's probably going to get a little bit higher over the next few years. I also wanted to touch on a point of group sets. In these days, entry level, I would not recommend anything less than Shimano 105 or SRAM Rival. And a lot of the group set options that are coming out of China, the newer cyclists, they don't want to faff around with that stuff. They just want turnkey. They want to hop on a bike, ride it, and know that if there's a problem with the bike, that they can take it down to the local bike shop or wherever they got the bike from and get whatever issue they're having regulated. They're not going to learn how to download the app to be able to take care of setting up the gears and indexing and all that stuff. That's just not happening with that group. So that's the other shift. And getting back to the Basso Venta R, I took this bike out on a group ride earlier this morning. And mind you, I have not been on a bike for the last 9 days, and you know what happens with our fitness. But remarkably, the bike performed really well, much better than expected. I'll talk to you a little bit about some of my initial ride impressions and feelings with this. I'll do another video later on where I'm going to change out the wheel set, and then I'll give you another report on the bike. But the Venta R is a full carbon frame and fork. This is a size 53. I know it's big for a 53 because it has kind of like a endurance geometry with a fairly high head tube. The stack is high, the reach is shorter, which had me sitting up higher and a little bit more crunch than I would like. This is equipped with Shimano 105 mechanical, and I'm also gonna give my impressions on that group set. We've got a 50-34 crank set in the front and 11, what I believe is a 32 in the rear. I believe that these are aluminum wheels or 24 millimeter, regular spokes, nothing special or fancy about them. They're just entry-level wheels. We have a carbon seat post, Selle Italia saddle, aluminum bar and stem. It's the two-piece affair, as you can see. And the cables run under the bar and into this little funnel thing and into the tube. So we don't have any exposed cables or anything like that. It's a quality build. The bike performs very well. And I'm impressed with this as an entry-level bike. Price point of this bike is $3,000, almost said $30,000, $3,399. It actually works. All right, let's talk about my initial ride impressions. When I first got on the bike, I noticed that high stack, short reach thing immediately, but nothing for me to complain about. I just decided, let me just get in here and pedal. I did spend some time in the drops to help mitigate that a little bit. One of the things that I noticed about not the highest level of carbon is that mid-tier level of carbon seems to isolate you from some of the things that the bike is doing more so than premium levels of carbon. Of course, the wheel and tire combo, because these are Continental Ultra Sport, so they're not premium high performance tires. And the combination of the carbon and the wheels probably has a lot to do with that, but that's the whole point of entry level. Pedaling and pushing off and riding in a pace line at 22, 23, even 24 miles an hour, I was perfectly fine when I was in there drafting. When I got out of the pace line and I had to deal with the wind myself, I definitely felt like I was putting out more effort than I normally would. And again, a lot of that has to do with the position that I'm in. Also, I'm sure that the wheel set at that point is not being my friend. The bike brakes well, corners well, is solid, doesn't feel, I didn't hear any weird noises or anything like that coming from the bike. The structure of the bike is very solid. I was comfortable for the ride that I was on. and I was able to get my power down when I needed to. So I'm gonna take this bike out on a few rides, do my typical evaluation, and then come back and give you guys another report. So that's my rant on entry level and my introduction to you of the Basso Venta. If you're interested in this bike, go see my friends down at Bike Tech and let me know what your thoughts are on those 3 elements of entry level that I shared with you. That the bikes that we consider entry level have changed, that the cyclists that we consider entry level cyclists have changed, and that the price point of entry level has changed. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that. All right, I appreciate your support of our channel by watching these videos, liking, commenting, and subscribing. As always, our aim here is to inform, instruct, inspire. Be blessed.